Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming.
I'm just allowing folks in. Feel free to turn on your cameras. It makes it more informal that way. You don't have to, but it's great to see your faces. I'm Polly Ringo. I'm the founder of Black Women Photographers. And I'm so excited to have Ariel Robinson here. And shout out to Lightroom for helping make this conversation possible. We're going to be talking to Ariel about all the things as much as we can within this hour about herself, her work so far, and what is to come. Ariel, welcome. How are you doing?
I am doing really well. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to everybody who is here. It's a lot of people here on time. I love that. I'm super, super excited to just chat a little bit today.
So, Ariel, for those who may not know you, please really give us an overview of who you are and how it even started for you.
Yeah, so my name is Ariel Robinson. I'm currently a junior multimedia journalism student at North Carolina A&T State University. I'm originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. Outside of school, I am a mixed media artist and the author of The Modern Day Black Alphabet and Black Hair Care Color, a collection of drawings. I began photography. Well, I've always really liked taking nice photos because, in middle school growing up, I wanted to be Instagram famous. I'm like, how can I be famous like all those other people, getting all of those likes and things? So in high school, my junior year of high school, I would take paper from school, like the big poster board paper, and I would do little iPhone photo shoots with them. And I just really enjoyed taking photos of myself and because I was comfortable. And then it wasn't until the summer going into my sophomore year of college, I got my first camera. And it was because I had my own brand at the time. So I had a clothing brand and I needed photos for my clothing brand, but it was really hard to find a photographer or I didn't have the money. And it was just like a lot of things getting in the way. So I bought my own camera and I started taking photos, but then quickly I realized I actually didn't like having a clothing brand and I didn't like taking photos, like doing freelance. I really liked to create on my own and do personal projects and creative projects. So from there, I just started creating. A year later, I created my book, The Modern Day Black Alphabet, which started as a photo series. I never intended for it to be a book, but people just really resonated with the photos. And so I turned it into a book. And now we're on our second book, which isn't photography, but I have been shooting a lot of people. Usually I shoot myself, but I really branched out and started shooting other people. So that's a little bit of my background in terms of photography.
Thank you. And I see we have some NC folks in the house. We
Yes.
love from Raleigh. That's amazing. I forgot to say, if you haven't already, feel free to drop in the chat your location because I'd love to see where people are tuning from. Damola, St. Bull City. I love it. I love it.
Yes, we love it.
Okay, Durham, because I was like, I don't know what Bull City is, but go ahead.
Yeah, so if you're from North Carolina, you know what Bull City is, but if you're not, it's Durham, North Carolina.
Okay. Thank you. So I guess I really want to start, I want to rewind a little bit before you even like started doing the bugs. You've always been an artistic person, right? Can you talk to us more about that and I guess how you and like who are your influences and how you even like nurture all these different creative hats you wear?
Yeah, so I have always been a creative. I've always wanted to be in a creative field. Growing up, I wanted to go into music. So when people would ask me, like, what do you want to do when you grow up? I would say, I want to be Beyonce because she's just like the epitome of just like excellence. And I just love music. And that's like my first love. So I always just loved music, and it really wasn't until I got into middle school that I started like learning about other art forms, so like art, visual art, painting, photography, dancing. I love to dance, I love acting, just doing all things creative. So I started really dabbling into those things in middle school, but then I took a back seat when I was in high school and I played some sports. So after graduating from high school, I was like, okay, I want to tap back into these things. And for me, I'm really, really inspired by Tyler, the creator, because he does so much and he just like is epitome of like a renaissance man. Like he does it all. He does music, he does fashion, he just has a good time, and I'm like really really inspired by that. But also just people in my community, like my mom, who always makes sure like I'm where I need to be, or just supporting me, reposting my things, telling her friends about it. And then also here at A&T, I have a really, really good community of friends who also do photography. Like one of my friends, Hakeem, he's in here. Like I'm super inspired by him. He does amazing film work. So I'm really just inspired by the people that I'm around, not only in like the photography, but just like the music. Like I'm working on music and just like dancing and having a good time. So yeah, I would say that my HBCU is definitely one of my inspirations because you see so many different people, but also Tyler, like from a celebrity standpoint, I'm super duper inspired by him. But I would say, like, in terms of strictly photography, I'm really inspired by like Tyler Mitchell and like Renelle. I think her last name is like Medrano, something like that. Super duper inspired by her work. So those are some people that I really look up to.
And now, as a creative who wears multiple hats, like how hard is it to like balance it? I feel like sometimes when you try to do one thing, you feel compelled that you have to always be wearing that hat, right? Be the master of that. And then you're like, no, I'm gonna be the master of X, Y, and Z all at the same time. Like, talk to us more about that.
Yeah, so I'm always overwhelmed. Like I'm overwhelmed all the time. Do not let Instagram and Twitter fool you. I'm over in shambles like every day. It's like I have these battles like, oh, I want to quit. I don't want to do this. And then I'll be like, actually, yes, I do because I really love doing this. It's like it's fun. So for me, it's a constant battle and conflict because I am a human. There's never 100% of the time where I'm like, I want to do this and do that. But then once I tell myself, you know what, I'm gonna quit. I'm not gonna do it, and I'm like, actually, no, because it's a part of me and it's something that I really, really, really love. So it's a lot of back and forth. I'm also just really young. So it's like I'm still trying to figure out myself. But for me, if I feel like something genuinely isn't making me happy, then I'm like, I have to cut it off as hard as it is. But most of the time when I'm like, okay, I'm gonna cut it off, I'm like, I need to bring it back because I love photography or I love skating or I love doing this and it's making me happy. And as soon as it doesn't make me happy anymore, and I'm like, I gotta let it go. And I feel like sometimes if you just don't give yourself expectations, it's like things work out better than like, oh, I need to be the best at whatever it is, because it's like what's the best to you will be crap to somebody else. So it's like you have to really be like the owner of your own success and like your own metrics, and not be caught up in what other people think is like the right way to do things, because when you're in a creative field, there is no right or wrong. Some people may prefer it, some people may not, but at the end of the day, you have to really be like in control of what you're doing and what you like. And if you feel like you're doing too much or you're doing something simply but because somebody tells you you need to do it, then like you probably shouldn't. You should just cut it off and really focus on the things that you enjoy, because then everything else will start to fall in place.
You are amazing. And and one of the reasons why you're amazing, I'm gonna pull up an old tweet. Don't worry, it's nothing bad.
Okay, who wrote Twitter?
I love Twitter. I love looking at like people's growth.
Oh,
And for those who may not see this, let me try and zoom that up. So you tweeted, what was this? June 13, 2020. This is my last time flexing on y'all. No, it's not, but go ahead. So can we talk about the growth? My senior high school fashion teacher in 2018 told me my little home photo shoots would never pay the bills. Jokes on her.
uh,
2018. There's this photo. Oh, sorry, y'all. And then 2020, the next photo. And I just love this for so many reasons. But I guess I want to know, it's like, for one, how is that teacher doing now? No, I'm playing, but but for what, like I think some people really use that as, if someone was told that, that could really just like stop them and just like, they'd feel defeated and not and would stop right away. But I think for you it was like field of fire.
for
Is
sure.
okay. Um,
Yeah, like
Go ahead.
we were in class, and so like I said, I'm always like I'm always in a constant like conflict with myself. So like even this morning I woke up, I'm like, I can't do this today. I just like I feel so overwhelmed. And then I had to get myself together. But we were in my class and we were having a conversation. It was me and some other students. And I was telling them like I'm not going to college because I didn't have any scholarships. I didn't have any money to pay for it. And I'm like, I just don't want to go into like extreme debt over college. I'm just like, one, because I really don't know what I want to do with my life anyway at the time. So I'm just like, you know what, I'm not gonna do it. And so for me, like at the time, as I started my junior year of high school, just like taking photos with my phone, doing little photo shoots. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really know if I'm gonna go to college or whatever, but like at the time I had like a little business, I'm doing a little something, something. And so I'm like, yeah, I think this is what I'm gonna do. Of course I ended up going to college, but that didn't stop me from still like creating. And so my teacher, who was not in the conversation at all, she's like, yeah, those little home photo shoots aren't going to pay the bills. Like, and she's a teacher. I'm like, no offense to you, but like, you really don't know what's going on over here. Like, she's like, you're going to be 30 wishing you had went to college and got a real job or whatever. And I'm like, oh no, ma'am. Like, because I'm the type of person like, what I'm doing is like not to prove anything to anybody, because at the end of the day, like nobody has that much power over me. But it's also just really, really sweet to see like all these people who think that they know what's for you. And you're like, nope, I had a vision and I like put this to work. So yeah, when I was sitting back last summer and I'm like, oh yeah, no, for sure. I definitely proved something to not only myself, but her, because it's like people have these ideas and they project a lot that you have to do this, you have to have this path, you have to get a job, you have to go to college. And that's not always the case. Some people don't go to college. I'm in college right now and I'm getting a lot out of it. Like especially with my major, I'm learning a lot about like Premiere Pro and like videos and things like that. But also outside of school, like I'm meeting a lot of people, I'm connecting with a lot of people. But sometimes that doesn't work for other people. Everybody has a different experience. So for her to feel so highly to like say that, I'm like, yeah, no, you really don't know. And so it just felt really good to be able to prove not only to her but myself, like when people tell you like, oh, social media is not a job, photography is not a stable job, art's not a job. Yes, it is, because people need those kinds of things. Like at the end of the day, people need something to indulge in, something to be a part of. There are stories that need to be told. And it feels really good when you can prove to somebody like this isn't something new. This is a industry and you can make a living out of photography and art.
I love that so much. And that brings me to my next point. Another tweet. Again, it's not bad. I'm about to pull it up real quick. Uh,
Okay.
for people, if they don't know, they will know with this one. Okay, so I love because yeah, I think you're always going viral on Twitter. And you said, did you know it costs $0 to retweet a young Black author? And you mentioned this is your first book. For those who do not know it, it's a modern day Black alphabet book. And I'm just like, your mind, because it is just such a genius concept and a project. And so I've been sharing some of those pieces from the book on our Instagram handle. Obviously, you can see it, the full book in context, if you purchased the book. And I'm like, this just brings back so many memories. And I just would love to know, like, how did it even like begin from idea to book? How did you even like begin to execute this?
Yeah. So pre-quarantine, I had so many creative ideas and I never had the time to really like put them into place because I was in school or I was in a dorm and it was super small. Or like I had other things on my Instagram and Twitter that like were little creative concepts, but never did I have like the chance to really hone in like every single day and do like complex concepts. So going into quarantine, I would say the first few weeks I was on a TikTok thing. So I was just making TikToks, like having a good time. And then one day I was like, I want to, in one of the TikToks, I did like a fashion TikTok and I had this outfit on. I'm like, this outfit is so cute. I want to take some pictures. So I took some pictures. I did a little home photo shoot in my room and I posted it. And I'm like, ooh, I really, really like these pictures. People weren't even like really like messing with them. Like I didn't get that many likes or anything like that. But I'm like, I really like these pictures. So oddly enough, the next day was Air Max Day. And so I'm like, you know what? We're gonna take some pictures in my Air Max. So I did like a fake Nike campaign, and people liked it so much that I'd end up doing 10 installments. And so after the 10 installments, I'm like, I'm shooting every day, I'm editing every day, like I'm in this groove. I want to keep it going. So I follow a lot of like Black history pages, Black archive pages of different photographers, because I really like learning about the people that came before me. So I went to my Twitter archives, and I had seen that I had archived a tweet about the Black ABCs of 1970 by the Society of Visual Education in Chicago, Illinois. And so basically in 1970, so yeah, that's my fake Nike campaign. I think that's like installment 7, or that was installment 8, maybe, I don't know. But yes, I was creating these campaigns from my home. And so after that, I'm like, I want to keep this momentum up. So I go to my Twitter, I find this tweet that I had archived like a year before. And so I'm like, okay, we're gonna recreate this. I'm like, I really like this idea of these like this ABCs type of thing. So I'm like, I want to recreate this, but in my own way. And it worked out so perfectly because not only was 2020 the 50th anniversary of the original Black ABCs, but it also helped me to really dive into like the concept of being at home, and like how the home is the foundation to almost all life. Like that's where you learn things, that's where you learn right from wrong, that's where, everything really starts. So for me, I shot all these photos in my home over a 14-day period. And so like halfway through the series, it started to pick up some traction. And people were like, if you made this into a book, I would buy it. And so I made it into a book. And yeah, the rest is really history, to be honest. But like each day I'd wake up and I would create about 3 letters and post them on my Instagram. And never had I intended for it to be a book. It was just a photo series.
I think that is incredible. So when you even like decide to even say, "Oh, I'm gonna make it a book," I mean, what does that even mean? Because I think, I think it's you say it so easily, but how like what's the process of like of making a book, specifically a photo book, and then we could talk about your other book, and then I think with your marketing and everything that you do, like you are an expert at it. I feel like you do like whole artist layouts, like how a label would do it, promoting an artist, like whatever project. I love the way you roll out your content. Yeah, so go from there.
Yeah, so like, okay, when people decided, or kind of the people decided for me that it was going to be a book, I went to Google and was like, how to self-publish a book, YouTube, and people like ask me all the time how to do it, and it's the most simple thing. I just Googled it. I am a Google queen. I'm gonna Google some things. I had to do a little bit of research on the different self-publishers, and from there, I was like, okay. I came upon Lulu. And so with Lulu, you can upload your internal content and have the book out before you even physically have your own copy. And at the time, I did not have any money. I'm in quarantine. I don't have a job. I'm like, we're going to see how can I make this with absolutely no money and make money from it. So for me, it was using Lulu. And so now with my books, I use InDesign because that's just better. But at the time, I used Canva to like put all the photos and everything together and create it into a PDF. It took a lot of compressing, finding like softwares online where I could compress a PDF. And then once I got from there, I uploaded into Lulu. I added my description, if I wanted it to be hardcover or glossy, all of those things. It definitely took some time to like actually get it together, because at the time Lulu, they didn't even have like a Canva plugin, but now they do. So like you can create your book with Canva through Lulu. If it's like a book where you are like it's like words and chapters and all that, Canva's probably not the option for you. InDesign is a much, much better option. But if you wanted to do something more cost effective and you only have photos and you already have all the files together, and you want to put them together, Canva's a place. So after that, I had my PDF, I uploaded into Lulu, I put the book for sale, and I'm like, ooh. So people actually had the book before I even had it. I'm like, I hope it looks good when it gets to their house. Cause like, I'm like, I don't have the book and I need them to buy the book so I can buy the book for myself. But yeah, so that's really what it was. And then after that, the marketing, like I had no marketing plan. It was like, I'm gonna tweet about this, I'm gonna go on Facebook, I'm just gonna like make posts about it. And that's really what my marketing plan was for the first book. It was just like tweeting about it every day, having people add to my emailing list, like because Twitter is a big place. And I was like, somebody out here is going to find it. I'm just going to keep going and keep putting myself out there. And after 96 days, I finally went viral. So it took a while. And even then, I still haven't hit 10,000 books. So I'm still, working at it, trying to find new audiences. But it was really just putting myself out there in the most cost efficient way. And that's how that book was able to just gain traction, is just being consistent.
I think that's amazing. First of all, congratulations.
Thank
And you
you.
will, I know you will hit that 10K, the road
I
to
will. One of
10K.
these days, I'm going to
I
hit it.
know that. And I think you said something that's really important. One, you were doing research beforehand, but two, the consistent part, being consistent with it. You said you tweeted for 96 days
Yes.
until it went viral. And I just think that takes a lot of effort. I think most people would not have done that, maybe 5 days. And I think that just goes to show you, like, why you are so great. And so when you are, I think when part of like the marketing aspect, because I saw it in one of the replies, but also because I subscribed to your newsletter, what made you start doing that? Do you find that that's easier to, actually get support? Because I don't think a lot of photographers, let alone artists, have newsletters. And I think
Yeah.
it's so important. Like here are my emails from you. And I just love it because I'm like, look at this. I love this so much. And I just think everyone should start doing that mailing list if they haven't already, because like I love it. I think it's so easy, and I think you just market yourself so well. So
Yeah. So like for me, I try to model other people, and I think that really works when you find somebody that you really admire, or somebody is doing things that you like, and you kind of like not copy them, but if you take them and kind of model them in your own way, it'll never be the same as theirs. But for me, it's like, okay, I think about, okay, what do companies do, these large companies that make millions every single year? I don't need to be a billionaire, but it's like I want to be well off where I can have enough space to really just create the things I want and not have to worry about money. And so for me, like you said, like having like an artist layout. So with my second book, that was kind of different from the first one because I kind of knew what I was doing. But for me, it's like, okay, when somebody sends you an email, it has to be simple, it has to be straight to the point, and they have to know like what the email is. So for my emails, I like to do a picture, tell you what it is, give you a coupon code, and send you on your way. And if you're gonna indulge in it, you're gonna indulge, and if you're not, you're not, and that's okay because you don't get 100% of the people that open your emails. But I think email is a great way, and for me, I love watching like artists, entrepreneur vlogs, seeing what are these people doing. They're making so much money from the things that they love. How can I do that in my own way? And for me, it's like sign up for my emailing list because when I drop something or there's something cool, like they can do it. And even me, I'm not on top of my emails as much as I should be, but it definitely does make a difference. So finding those people that you admire and see what they're doing. The big companies are using email marketing, they're using their social media platforms, they're creating full campaigns and content around these products. I'm like, why can't I do that too? And so then I just do it.
that is incredible. Shout out to Jada who just purchased right now. Love it, love it. Um, I'm opening up your site right now because I really want, again, just like love how you present everything. And so with your site, I mean, I think the biggest thing is one, how creatives who wear multiple hats are able to actually just like present themselves in a way that doesn't get confusing and everything else. Would you have any advice on that? So like, because you do wear multiple hats, and how you're able to, present that without confusing people, like this is what you can expect when they come to your page, kind of thing.
Absolutely. So honestly, I know people who come to my Instagram page are probably confused, like, dang, she does this and does this. But for my website, I try and keep it like super duper simple and easy, but still have that like, that it factor to it. So like, oh, this is nice. But for me, just having different like pages for every single thing and just having things out there. And then if people have asked, do have questions, take those questions and use them to create better. So it's like for me, a lot of times people ask for my portfolio. They're like, oh, you do photography, like can I see some of your photos? I'm like, yeah, if you go on my website you can go under the portfolio page. So even if my Instagram is a little bit confusing, now that they've asked me that question, I know I need to make it easy for them to figure out who I am. So I take those questions as notes, like as suggestions. Like if somebody asks me about them, how can I make it where they don't have to ask about it again? So on my website, you'll see like where to shop. And even under the shop, I have like my two books on two different pages. I have my blankets on a page. So everything is on its own thing. And if you want to go through and like look around, you don't feel like everything is jumbled up. You don't get lost. I try and keep everything as simple as possible without it being boring. So I would say that every single artist definitely needs their own website. Like if that's what you're doing or you want to be in different like things, even if you do have like a brand, I think everybody should have a personal website if they're going to brand themselves as a creator. Because even with Black Hair Care Color, the hardcover has its own page, the paperback has its own page. Everything is super simple and easy to navigate if you are like a stranger, you've never been on my website.
Thank you. Thank you so much for breaking down your process with that. I do want to talk about your second book now. What even made you think of, okay, I got one book down, let me just do another one? Like what made you think of, this book? How did you go from idea to execution with this one?
Yes. So I actually like a few months before even starting this book, I tweeted, I'm like, I'm not making another book, like no time soon. But then I did because I'm like, actually, I do want to. And it's because I didn't have any pressure on myself to create it. So for this second one, I was thinking about like the different things that I wanted to explore. And I came upon like Black hair care. And so like that's a really big thing. Like our hair is a big thing. Like we do our hair, we might wear a wig, we might have braids. There's so much versatility and power in hair. And I was wondering, how can I explore that in a very simple way? And so with my first book with the alphabet, that's like the foundation of language. And so that's super easy and digestible for not only children, but also adults and people who may not know about our culture or like who we are. So for Black hair care, I wanted to explore it through color because color is so important. The packaging is so important. When you see those colors and you feel them, you have memories that are behind them. You think about like, oh, the blue magic or the pink lotion. Those colors mean a lot. And so for me, I'm like, how can we touch on these different experiences, but in the most simple way possible, and also leave a lot of room for interpretation? So that just started with drawing. I wanted to get away from photography because I'm like, I'm getting a little bit tired of taking photos. And I also didn't think that photographing these products would really do them justice. I thought that like if I drew them, I could really be a part of each and every single line that goes into them, and I'm able to tell a story. But also when people see like the coloring book and the prints, they can color in how they want to, and they're being a part of the experience as well. So my whole entire drawing process, it was, oh man, see, I need my website, I need to work on some things. But I took me about 5 6 months to draw every single thing out. And I would just like draw it, scan it, draw on top of it so I could get everything together. And then I put the book together in InDesign. And yeah, then we have Black hair care and color.
That's insane. 5 to 6 months, and you're still in school.
I am.
So how do you balance it all?
I make a lot of to-do lists. I I have mental breakdowns all the time. Like I'm like I feel overwhelmed all the time, and then I just live in my emotions right in the moment. And I'm like, it's okay to feel like this. And then after that, I'm like, okay, now I feel better. And then I'm like, let's do it. Let's tackle this list. You're strong. You can do it. But there are times, literally every day, where I'm like, I'm so overwhelmed. I can't do this. And so I just have to sit down with myself and be like, okay, you're fine. It's okay. We're going to get through this. We're going to do what we got to do. But yeah, it's not pretty. It's not glamorous, but we're making it happen.
What would you say, was the hardest part of releasing not one but two books in such a short amount of time for you?
I would just say the marketing is always the hardest part, getting people to buy it because people like to assume that like you're on top of the world and everybody's buying it. But it's very hard, like in the mud, on the ground, really like telling people about what you're doing. Social media like likes don't equate to sales. So a lot of times it's like, what can I do that's new and innovative but isn't gimmicky, or something that I really, really enjoy and that I like? It's like you have to be very strategic with what you're doing. And sometimes you fall flat. Sometimes you don't reach the goals that you originally had. That doesn't mean that like you have to throw it off the table. It just means like maybe that time that you thought was the time is not the time. put your head down, keep working, like really get to it, and it'll come when it's time. But I feel like a lot of times we're on our own timelines, and it's like, no, that's not how it works. So for me, even now with Black Hair Care and Color, I'm still like marketing it, finding new ways to present the book to new audiences, because it's like the day that I sell 1 million books is when I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm content with myself because I've reached 1 million people. I touched 1 million people. But right now I'm not nowhere near close to that. So there's still days where I'm like, okay, we got to sit back down at the table and figure out how we're going to keep working.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for being so transparent with your process. I think it's always so helpful to hear that. If you have any questions for Ariel, please, please, please feel free to drop in the chat. She is happy to answer any questions. I want to talk about some of the products you do have outside of your books, which I think it's so cool. Like you have other products.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so what was the ideas like behind these blankets? Again, what because these are part of your fake campaigns, right? So talk to us
Yes.
about this process.
Yeah, so I actually, Twitter is like the basis of my whole life. I was on Twitter and I seen this girl, she made a tweet and she was like, your degree isn't gonna keep you warm at night, like in quotations. She had a picture of her degree on a blanket and she was like wrapped up in it. I'm like, oh, this is so clever. So I'm like, I want to do that same thing, but like with my art. So originally I took like my Forces Female and the Look Mama Can Fly campaigns, put them on blankets, and my caption was, your art's not going to keep you warm at night. And so at the time, like I really didn't have any aspirations of selling the blankets, one because it was super duper expensive to make, and yeah, I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. But then after a few months of just like lots of research, I was able to figure out a way to sell them for, a cost efficient for a luxury blanket. And so then I was like, okay, we're gonna make them. And I've been like up and down about like taking them off or keeping them up. Right now they're up if people want to purchase them. But yeah, so it was just like from that one tweet, I'm like, I like this idea. But then once I started getting the physical blankets, I'm like, I actually really, really like the way that this feels and looks. So I'm just gonna keep it going.
Yeah, I think the hardest point, you touched on something that I think is the hardest point for creatives is like pricing and
Yes.
even just like how they even price their shoots, how they price their prints. How do you even begin to price a book or a blanket in this case?
Yeah, so I kind of had to do, like I said, research, looking at other people with like books. There's a lot of people whose books are way cheaper than mine. But then I also had to think about myself and like I deserve to be paid too for my art. A lot of times people be like, no, just make it cheaper, just make less. And it's like, do never let somebody like lowball yourself, because there were people on Twitter who were like, just sell it for this much and just get exposure. But it's like at the end of the day, you have to eat, you have to pay your bills, you have to make a living off of the things you're doing, and you deserve to make a living off of that. So I had to do a little bit of research about just how much should I make. Should it be 10% on top of this, or like, that's just a random number. And then also with my publisher, they give you like a number, and they're like, okay, if you make this number, you'll make $0. And so now you have to start considering that, okay, so how much does it cost to ship if I am shipping? How much are my own daily expenses? If this is going to be my income, it's like I have to make this much a month. So it's like, how many books am I going to sell this month? And how should it be priced? And so for me, I was just like, okay, this makes the most sense. If I go any higher than $35 for a hardcover book, nobody's going to buy it. I'm not even going to buy it for myself, because I'm like, that's just a lot. But then I also had to realize it's 64 full color pages. And so it's a hardcover, it has gloss. So there's a lot of things to consider. But I would say that when people are researching how they should price themselves, they should definitely look at it from like a business standpoint, in terms of like how are businesses pricing their products, in terms of like shipping. After you have like your shipping and your savings and all that, on top of that, how much do you want to make? And then that should be like your percentage. So if you're like, I do want to make 5% on top of all the expenses that are on top of how much the product costs, then that kind of helps you start to price things. In terms of photography and shoots, I don't even do freelance shoots. So like most of the shoots that are with other people are creative shoots. And so at that point, there is no money, because I want it to just be like, I don't want it to be a business. I want it to be something where we're really creating. And even then, like as a creator working with brands, I don't know how to price myself. I'm not even going to sit here and lie. I still don't know. And so that's something I'm still figuring out. But in terms of products, you have to consider a lot, but also don't forget to consider yourself because you deserve to make money and you deserve to have luxuries and things like that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Uh,
Or
I'm gonna pull up the video because I love this so much. Because okay, you do the book, and then you have people purchasing the book, and then you were like, okay, you actually have to ship these out.
yeah, so like my business model over the summer was so people would purchase the book and I put in it that it was a print on demand pre-order type of thing because I would send the orders to the publisher, have them create the books, and it just was more cost efficient for me to not have all the books just buy a whole bunch and then say nobody buys it. So people would put in their orders and then I would put it in with the publisher, and instead of having the publisher send it to them, which is something that I do now, I would have it sit to me because I wanted to check each of the books and make sure that they were right. And like in some of these clips, you don't see me checking them. For the most part, I would just make sure that like everything is okay because I have had times where the book was like upside down or like somebody else's book was inside of my book. And so this just was working so good for me because the shipping time from the publisher to my house was so quick and I was able to check it and get it out without it being like, where's my book at, you know? But now that's not that business model doesn't work for me. So when people purchase from like Amazon, Barnes and Noble's, Books a Million, my publisher creates the book, does a quality control check for me, and then sends it out. And if people have any issues or problems, I don't have to worry about it myself. And it makes everything 10 times easier because it's like I can't physically ship books anymore when you're in school and you stay in an apartment and you're shooting people and doing music. It just doesn't work. But in the summertime, it was working out perfectly for me. I was having very, very low problems in terms of people saying, oh, I didn't like my book, or it came back wrong, or my book got lost. Like things were moving very, very smooth for me.
Amazing. That makes so much sense. Because as you grow, you can outgrow some of these systems,
Yeah.
and I'm glad that you found something that makes your workflow much easier. And so would you say that that is typically then, like the norm? So most people should just try to have that like be handled by their publisher then?
It really just depends because like at the time I didn't have that many. I mean, I had many sales, but I also just enjoyed being a part of the process. So like writing notes on everybody's books. And then like before, up until a few weeks ago, some people would ask for signed books and I wouldn't be able to sign it. But now I have an option where if somebody who does want it signed, they can purchase it from my website. And if they don't really mind and they want that faster shipping option, they can do it from one of the larger retailers. But I think it really is a case by case thing because if you want to be more a part of the process, then you should definitely, if you do put out a book or anything, you should definitely have it sent to you before you send it out to the other people, or pre-order like a certain amount and say like, okay, we're going to ship these out and then come back in and we'll order more. I think everybody's like different and it's a trial and error process. So like what may work in the beginning may not work in the end, and it's okay to be welcome to change.
Thank you, thank you. We have one question in the chat. Again, if you have any questions for Ariel, please drop it in the chat. Wanda asks, how did you connect with the larger publishers?
So for the publishers, I would just research them and see other people who are authors, finding them on Instagram and seeing like who their book is published through. It's just a lot of research. When you start to research things, there's lots of YouTube videos about people. There's a whole author YouTube world. So when you start to really like dive into it and you become a student of whatever you want to get into, you start to figure out like, okay, this makes sense. Because a lot of times when people ask me questions about books, I can't answer them and I just tell them to research. And I don't want them to think I'm being funny, but every book is different. My book with full color pages and gloss and hard case may not be the same like good publisher for somebody who has a chapter book that is full black and white and they want it to be paperback. So everything is different. The resources are out there. So just finding people that you admire and kind of, like I said, modeling what they do. Who are their publishers? Who are their marketing people? How are they getting to these things? And it's like, okay, how can I work that for myself?
Thank you so much. And then one of the things that I also wanted to touch on is I've been seeing you doing some press rounds. What is that like to one put yourself out there and actually, say like, okay, as I think as creatives, I guess what I should say is like as photographers, we used to be behind the scenes. So what is it like to actually then put yourself in front of the scenes in order to, market yourself some more and the things that you have going on?
Yeah, so sometimes it can be overwhelming when you're like trying to put yourself out there and you're like, oh, I don't know if I'm good enough or if they want to have a story. But it's like, you won't know unless you try. And most of the times, if these people do not want to run a story on you, they just won't reply back. They literally will just not reply back. And you're like, okay, and you might forget about it. But I think that everybody has a story that deserves to be told. And whenever I was doing my second book and I was figuring out how was I going to promote it, I did do it in a way of like a musical artist. So it's like, okay, before somebody comes out with the album, they have their photos. So it's like when you do a photo shoot, you have more than one photo. So it's like, okay, so my thought process when I created this, I'm like, okay, I need a wig that's big because when people are scrolling, they're gonna stop and be like, oh my gosh, this is huge. And in fact, they did stop. They're like, okay, now I want to see like, who is this girl? Like, what is she doing? Why does she have that book in her hand? And so it got a lot of traction. And so I'm like, okay, we got some people looking at what's going on. And so once the book came out, it's like, okay, now I have this first 30 days after this. What are we going to do in that first 30 days? And I actually made a tweet about it. I'm like, you don't have to be promoting whatever your product is for 30 days straight. You don't have to do that, but at least kind of know. So for me, I created a press kit and it was just like it had my face on it. I don't know if I still have the press kit like up on like Twitter, but it had my face on it about myself, about my book, why my story was important, why my book is important, just kind of bragging on yourself. And I sent it out to a whole bunch of different writers who I thought would maybe like it. And then some people from this tweet, they reached out to me and was like, I want to talk to you about your book. But when you really model yourself by what you like or the people who are doing things like Sweetie, the rapper, she's an amazing, amazing person that I look to because she does amazing rollouts. Like she has her music videos, she has her vlogs, she has her merch, she has collaborations. So when you're doing photography, especially if you're creating a zine or you're doing a photo series, I think it's really important to just follow up, to connect with people, to put yourself out there, email, email, email. With my first book, I sent out over 100 emails before I got my first story, which was a local one. But I was like, okay, we're just going to keep emailing these people, telling them about whatever I'm doing and just following through. So even if your first 30 days doesn't consist of like press, it could be like, how can I tell people about what I just did, but in a different way? So, like for me, I have some things coming out, even though it's been more than 30 days. I have some things coming out around Black hair care and color, like a ASMR coloring with me. Let's just color, or like going on live, doing giveaways, different things like that. Figuring out how can you put a product on the table, but in a different way. Like so I would say that people just you have to get creative with what you're doing. But as a photographer, don't just stop with your photos. Create prints, create a virtual exhibit, go on live and like scan film. Like, those are things that get people engaged in your process, but reroute back to whatever you wanted them to be a part of.
Someone's been in the chat, a marketing queen, and I
Thank
agree because
you.
that is amazing. And I just love the whole concept. This in this photo, I just love it as well. And especially your caption was brag different, and I think that's what you do.
Something
How hard
right.
is it to actually? One thing forgot to ask is like, how hard is it to get your work picked up by Google Books, Barnes and Nobles, Amazon? I didn't think I even saw you post something about Walmart. Like,
Yes.
yeah,
It
talk to us
was
about
my
that.
publisher. It was with my publisher. So it was
Okay.
just like, but that process was long because you want to make sure that like your fonts are embedded and they're flat and that you like all the internal content. So it was a lot of technical things going back and being like, ooh, that doesn't line up right. We got to go back to it. So it was a lot of back and forth. But once you start to like work with these like larger publishers, So like Ingram Spark is a perfect one. That's the one that I work with. It's super user friendly. You can go in, add your stuff. It's a little bit of back and forth. You can talk to their designers about things, but once you get everything together, they submit it to those retailers, and if the retailers feel like it's fit for their companies, then they will push it out on their website. So like Target was a place I wanted to be on. They didn't accept me, but I'm like, it's okay. In the future, when I like move even up from like Ingram Spark to somebody else, like where I'm more hands-on after the pandemic, then I'm like, hopefully, we can be in store and not just online. So it's really just about like not being afraid to switch things up. Um, and trying out new things. Like it's just about trying out new things, and once things do start to come together, you just don't stop right there. You can sit in that moment, be proud of yourself, celebrate yourself, but then think about, okay, what can I do next? How can I get sales through these distributors since now I'm on there? Things like that.
Sorry, y'all can't unmute fast enough. I think that is amazing. Someone said her mind, and that's what I was telling you right before we hopped on this. Like your mind, like I love it. I love it.
Appreciate it.
I'm pulling up another one, another two real quick. It goes along the lines of like what you were saying about like keep, I guess, challenging yourself and how you can do these announcements in such a creative way. Let me show everyone what I'm talking about right quick. Okay, and so with this one,
Oh yeah.
I it was the announcement of you joining Beats.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, you don't just say I have an internship. You're like, here's a whole photo shoot. Here's like my new employer. Talk to us about this internship.
Yeah, so I'm just an extra person. Like I'm extra. I'm very comfortable with shooting myself. And so with beats, I had known about this for like 2 months. And so I'm like, I don't know how I want to do it. I'm like, maybe I should make a video. Maybe I should do something. Like I know it's another tweet like a little bit like farther down that actually says like, hey, I'm gonna be working at Beats. But for me, that photo shoot was super duper duper simple. Like I had this so it was a tablecloth. It was like a holographic like tablecloth. I put it on the ground and I was just like, this is what we're gonna do. I put on a little outfit, had my wig on, and that's what I want to do. But like for me, it's just like, okay, how can I present this in a way that's true to myself, but also get some content? I want people to stop and look at what I'm doing and be like, ooh, that's cool. And so for me, I've been playing around a lot with like dimension and like having depth in my photos. So I actually have a set of photos. It's not of me, it's of one of my friends that's coming out in a few days, and we just really play around with like giving that depth and making you feel a part of it. So yeah, whenever I'm doing any of my announcements, I'm like, okay, how can we do this in a very cool way and create some photos that's like super simple, true to myself, but also gives a little pizzazz, because it's one thing just be like, hey, I'm doing this, but it's another thing to be a part of that process and really live in that moment. That's really special. It's like my first large internship. So it's a whole process for not only other people who see the content, but also me. Like it's super fun to do these shoots, get dressed up. It makes me feel good.
That's incredible, and congrats on that. I
Thank
think
you.
that is so huge. Is marketing what you're like studying? Like what is it that you are wanting to do? Or are you just naturally just so good at it because, as a photographer, as a two-time book author, you have to know how to do marketing, you have to know how to do social, you have to know how to do all of these things. So naturally you are, marketing like
Yeah,
or whatever, but like I mean, like is that something that you sought out to do?
okay, so coming into college, I was a marketing major and I changed my major because I didn't like the curriculum. It was just a little bit too like analytical, logistical for me. I'm like, it's just too many numbers and sales. And I am not like, yeah, I want to make money, but like secretly, I hate money. I'm like, I wish I could just wake up every single day and just create whatever I want. And that would just make me so happy. So for me, I was like, this whole marketing curriculum is not working for me. Accounting, knowing numbers, finances, like I know I should know it, but it was like, it was super boring and I wasn't enjoying myself. So I switched over to multimedia journalism. And with that, I was able to channel telling a story, right? Because whenever you think about the news eventually becomes history, right? And I want to be a part of the now and the later. So I was like, okay, how can I have fun in college and like what I'm learning? And so for me, since I've been a journalism student, I've learned how to use Premiere Pro and Lightroom and understand camera shots and understand how to use cameras. And so now I'm more on the creative side. And I think that somebody who really, really likes being on the creative side of marketing can do journalism, because like whenever you're marketing something, you're telling a story, you have to have a consumer want to be a part of that product and want to be a part of the history of the company. And so I feel like it's just a different angle. And so I look at it as like a lot of people go to medical school and law school. People go to law school and they don't study pre-law in undergrad. They might study something else, but they have that different angle to apply to their law. So there are journalism students who want to be lawyers, and they may want to be like lawyers for entertainment or sports. And so you may not study law, but that is something you are interested in. You may go to grad school, you have that different angle. So for me, I do have a marketing internship, but I wouldn't want to study marketing, because with journalism, I'm learning from a creative standpoint on how can you take a concept or an idea and convey it to other people, and they understand and they want to be a part of it. So no, I'm not a marketing student, but I like marketing things. But I would be fine never doing marketing and just creating things, or going into an editorial route, or working for a magazine. I wouldn't mind doing that. And my degree helps me to do all of these things.
Amazing. Like, so amazing. That's all I'm going to keep saying throughout this
Thank you,
conversation.
thank you, thank you. I appreciate it.
If you have any questions for Ariel, please drop it in the chat. We're almost out of time.
Oh.
Um, okay, we see some folks who are totally like in the same boat as you in the chat. I love it.
Yes, it's okay. We are all here together. It's never too late, because I definitely changed my major last year. I'm not graduating on time, and that's okay. There's no such thing as on time. You graduate when you graduate. You learn what you want to learn. And I'm like, if I'm gonna be here an extra year, maybe year and a half, I want to enjoy what I'm doing. I want to like be a part of the process, because a lot of times people are in college and they're like, oh, I hate college, and like, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I'm like, I hate it and I want to drop out. I'm a human, but I'm also doing things that are beneficial to like what I want to do in my life. And so I'm actually enjoying the process of learning and being a student. And so I feel like if you feel like you need to change it, because you're on your own route, and nobody wants to be a grown up early anyway. So stay in college and do what you got to do, but don't stay miserable.
Amazing. So I'm coming down to like one of my last few questions for you. And oh, sorry, I just see one in the chat. Wandra asks, did your parents support you with that change?
Okay, so my parents, they're not like regular parents. So my mom's super duper supportive, but also I had kind of already made the change before I even asked them, because my parents, they don't pay for college or anything like that. So like my stuff, like it's already paid for through like grants and scholarships and everything like that. But it was really a decision that I made myself. I'm like, I got to make this decision. I did lose a scholarship that I had, gained another one, but it's fine. So, like, if your parents are more strict, I definitely think that you should talk to them, because we're all very, very different. And our relationships we have are very different. But for my parents, it was more like, I'm switching my major, it's already done. And they're like, okay, that's good. But yeah, no, I kind of already made the decision for myself, because I'm at the end of the day, I'm the one who's up here having to go to these classes and do these things. I know people are going to give their opinion, like this makes more sense or this is more practical. But at the end of the day, like control, control, control is a big word. You're in control. Things aren't going to be glamorous. They're not going to be perfect. Things are going to get sad and lonely. You're going to be like, why did I make this decision? But if it's truly something that's in your heart and something that you want to do, it'll always prevail. It'll always come out the way you want it to be.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. One of my last few questions for you, because I don't think we touched on this necessarily, is so when you have these ideas, and especially when you're so, when you have a presence on social, when you're out there, and I think with something like Twitter, there's constant information, there's constantly people, putting out their ideas and everything like that. before they're even fully ready or protected. But so for you, how do you, make sure you protect your ideas? Enable to, like, you're sharing your work and you're like giving out teases, but how do you make sure you're actually protecting it for someone doesn't like run off with it in a sense?
Yeah, so like a few years ago, I used to be like, "Ooh, I have this idea on Twitter," and I kind of stopped doing that. I started to present them in forms that would protect me. So, like a book, when you put out your book, you got your copyright page, like that is your work. These photos are your work. And then a lot of times, I feel like photographers don't know that if you click that shutter button, that is your photo. Now, if there's something in there that might be a little bit controversial or trivial, that might come with some other things, but I'm still in the learning process. I am no expert. I'm probably going to run into some things as I keep going on, because there's so many ideas out there. Things do get muddy and watery. And when those times come, I will deal with them. But like thus far, I've just created things, and if people, I document the process a lot. So if people are like, "Oh, she took this or took that." Nope. I got the sketch, I got the behind the scenes, even if it's just like a little iPhone photo, just to have proof that it is something that I am doing. And then once the time comes where I feel like I am in some legal trouble or something like that because me and somebody we have similar ideas, I will turn to a professional, but I have not ran into that yet. And so I've just been kind of like documenting my things and doing what I have to do. But yeah, I haven't ran into any like trouble like that. So when the time comes, I'll handle it accordingly. I make sure I'm dealing with the people who know what they're doing. But yeah, I would just say knowing that your work is your work, document your process so that when people try and come at you crazy, you can be like, nope, we got it from day one to the finish. And yeah, I'm really big on having documentation of what I'm doing. So when I do put it out, everything falls in line.
Thank you. Thank you so much again for being so honest with your process and transparent.
Yeah.
I think that's super helpful. Um, I guess another question I have for you is then how do you, keep nurturing yourself and your creativity and staying inspired, especially during these times we're in?
Yeah.
Any advice on that?
Yeah, so because I do so many things, I'll probably be like, "Oh, I'm not inspired with photography anymore. Let's just put the camera down for a few weeks or a few months and let's do something else." So like lately I have been shooting a lot, and I've been like shooting with other people and really being able to come together and collaborate. And then back to the topic about like protecting yourself, having contracts. Like you can go online and find a contract template, read over it, make sure it like includes everything. And if it doesn't, and you find a problem, add it to the contract. And when you're working with other people, just signing, saying like, "This is my photo, I give you rights to share it, but it's still mine," just things like that. But yeah, when I don't feel inspired or I'm not feeling something, I just don't do it. Like I know that's hard to like say like just stop, because if you are somebody who's only passionate about one thing, it can get kind of hard. But finding other interests, because we are such complex dynamic beings. I know you have another interest or things that you like. Indulge in those things, and then you'll come back feeling refreshed, because you'll feel burnout if you keep doing the same things over and over again. So for like me, I love music. And so sometimes I hate music and I'm like, I don't want to write these songs. I don't want to do anything. And that's why literally if you go on my Apple Music, you'll see one song, because it took months for me to like get myself back in that mode. But now I'm about to come out with music this month. So it's like, for me, it's just like sometimes taking a break and falling in love with something else will nurture you and help you to be better at the thing that you loved all along, if that makes sense. So I would say don't be afraid to love more than one thing and do more than one thing. You don't have to have one title. You don't have to be one thing, because we're not a monolith. We have so many different parts to us. So why not just tap into those things?
Yes, yes. Thank you. You are preaching. My last question for you then is what is one thing that you feel like, every creative or whatever should be doing right now? Maybe they're trying to get a project off the ground. Maybe they're just, I don't know, in a rut. You already mentioned some advice to get out of a rut, but what is one thing you feel like everyone should be doing that they may not be doing?
I think that everybody should. Ooh, this is gonna sound cliche, but just taking time to yourself. Like if you like to binge watch shows, binge watch a show, like do things that genuinely make you happy, because then like the work that you're doing is going to make you happy too. Like for me, I love music, and so I collect vinyls. And so sometimes I'm like, we're just going to listen to some vinyls. And when you hear like other people's stories, it kind of inspires me to like create my own thing. So I would say just always take time to just have fun, even if that fun just is like watching a show or like hanging out with friends under COVID precautions, like things like that. So I would say really just take time to have fun, because as a creative, like we have to be the ones who have imagination and think outside of the box. And that's not going to happen if you like have this like straight model, like we have to wake up, shoot, edit, do all. It's not going to happen like that. You have to really like start to pull from things that you may not think would inspire you. So I would say do what makes you happy, but do things that are fun, that have nothing to do with work, and work will become like those things that is fun for you.
Amazing. Ariel, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you? How can they support you after this?
Yeah, so you can find me at arielrobinson.com. Literally, my Instagram and Twitter, they're on there. I'm on Instagram and Twitter all the time. But you can also buy my book on my website. You can see my portfolio from 2020. 2021, I'm actually like about to start adding in the photos and shoots that I've done that I haven't really showed anybody. So if you follow me on Twitter and Instagram, you'll see lots of new content in terms of photography. I have music coming out in a few weeks. So you'll see photography around that, because all the photos that I do, for the most part, I shoot myself or my friends shoot them. So it'll connect you with creatives in North Carolina. So I would just say follow me on Instagram and we can be friends.
You are amazing. Thank you so much, Ariel, for your time.
Pleasure is
Thank you,
all mine.
everyone, for tuning in. And we will, I guess, have some fun this weekend. Relaxing. I'm gonna take your advice.
Yes, it's so funny that I'm like, everybody relax because I'm about to go shoot. Like, I have a shoot. So I'm like, ooh, let me go
Jealous.
work. It's all in fun. It's all in fun.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.